I am Nick Shell, a certified Enneagram coach. I'm going to be referencing this book right here from the beginning because some of the content in this video was inspired by me reading this book, The Honest Enneagram by Sarah Jane Case. If you'd like to buy it off of Amazon, click a link right there and you'll be able to do that. If you want to become a certified Enneagram coach like I have, like 4 of my viewers out there who also clicked the link, you can do that as well. Or if simply you just want to know what your Enneagram is and get a better idea of that, find out for free. It takes about 10 minutes. There's a link for that as well. Let's talk about Paul Rudd. It's important that we do. Now, you may think, no, I don't agree. But I'm telling you, many people in my own life, whether they're friends or coworkers or even people that don't know me, they say this: you kind of remind me of Paul Rudd. So there you go. I'm not saying it, other people are saying it. Okay? So I'm aware of it. I'm self-aware of some resemblance to Paul Rudd. But it's not simply in how he looks, it's also in how he acts. If you look in most of his movies, he's this guy who kind of reluctantly goes through the motions. He's skeptical, but ultimately he's loyal. He's an Enneagram 6. He's 6, wing 7, happens to have the same Enneagram as me. Imagine that. Now, in the 7 years I've been doing videos on this channel, one of my most popular comments also is, you remind me of Ben Affleck. And if you're part of that camp, he happens to be Enneagram 6 as well. Either way, it's a male who's thinking, what could go wrong? Let me try to figure out how to prevent this, or at least deal with it in some way. And again, almost every Paul Rudd movie, it's almost like this is him. And then eventually he just does whatever he has to do. So there we go. With all that being said, because that's important and relevant, I was thinking about this. One of the traits about an Enneagram 6, like a 3, is that Enneagram 6s happen to be very tied to their gender. They embrace their gender. If you're a male 6, you probably can look at a male 6 and think they have specific masculine traits, and they're focused on image. Whether they admit it or not, they are, like 3s. Same thing with females. If they're a female 6, they specifically look and act feminine. And typically, a male Enneagram 6 specifically looks and acts masculine. Not necessarily the most masculine or the feminine if it's a female, but specifically, they definitely embrace their gender. And that's important. So, now we're 3 minutes in this video, and like, wait, doesn't the title say something about like why Paul Rudd still looks so young? Okay, so let's say this. I'm 41. I think Paul Rudd's like 12 years older than me. Okay, so he's over a decade older than me. But yet, someone would say, well, he looks younger than you. Okay, he's Paul Rudd. That's what he's known for, is looking young. So specifically, what about Paul Rudd makes him look young? And I'm going to loop this back to Enneagram 6 because I think it's definitely not a coincidence beyond his DNA that Paul Rudd looks so young. So, first thing about Paul Rudd, he still has his hair. Okay? So, that's just DNA. As a male, it was determined when you were born whether you're going to go bald at a certain age or not. And he happens to have the DNA that kept him from going bald. There we go. But specifically, number 2 though, is that, let's face it, he probably dyes his hair, right? Because any actor or musician over 40 that doesn't have gray hair, they're probably dyeing their hair. Well, I'm 41. I can tell you that I have not dyed my hair. If you look closely, you can probably see some gray. And I'll admit, I recently started doing some touch-ups there. But I happened to just get a haircut, so it's not showing. So I got a haircut before it was time to do the touch-ups to the gray. But imagine, in reality, let's have an honest conversation. Paul Rudd most likely has a lot of gray hair, but he dyes it to maintain that look. So when you already have hair and then you keep dyeing it and don't let the gray show through, that's going to also make you seem more young. But it's not just about physical traits that you may or may not have much control of. Paul Rudd actually smiles a lot. Now again, his character often is this reluctant guy that kind of shrugs and stuff. But if you notice him in a lot of his pictures, he's smiling. He smiles a lot because when you smile, you automatically are more childlike. And he does smile a lot. So that was number 3. Number 4, clothing. So here's the deal. Paul Rudd is in his 50s, but when you look at how he dresses, he doesn't dress like a 50-year-old man. He doesn't. Not the average 50-year-old man you'd see at Lowe's on a Saturday. He doesn't. Paul Rudd dresses more contemporary. He doesn't dress like a soccer dad. There's nothing over the top about how he dresses, but he dresses young enough, not necessarily trendy, but he dresses young enough to where it's flattering to how he looks. And then, of course, lastly, and this is very important, and people often overlook this about what makes people look young even when they're not necessarily young, is Paul Rudd is in shape. And of course, we know that he played Ant-Man in the Marvel movies, and he specifically got in shape to do that. And if you look at some of his older movies in the 2000s, he wasn't as, in shape, but he has maintained that for years now. And that's important because it just so happens to be that when specifically a man is physically in shape, he's going to have a more youthful appearance. That's something specifically that is a masculine trait. I'd say more so than even for females. For a man, you being in shape has a lot to do about your masculinity because it is a reference to your strength and your self-control. And Paul Rudd, by the way, another thing he and I have in common, we're almost exactly the same size. I'm 5'9", he's 5'10", according to the bonus material in the DVD of I Love You Man. That's what he says. So we're about the same size, had the same personality, and apparently look alike. He's Jewish, he's of Jewish descent, and I also have some Jewish heritage as well. So yeah, there's a lot of things that line up about me and Paul Rudd. But those are 5 things about Paul Rudd that I feel collectively help him to maintain that youthful appearance and even youthful personality. In this final minute of the video, I do want to remind you that this specifically is something that we see with Enneagram 6s and Enneagram 3s. We know that Enneagram 3s are very much focused on their physical appearance and keeping that up. They attach that with this concept of achieving things, and they really are focused on their appearance. It's less obvious with 6s, but they are. And I think it's, again, interesting that specifically 6s embrace their gender identity in general. That's something that's very important to them. 6s are all about hanging on and holding on to everything they can, preserving things as best as they can. So, as we age, and I remember learning this in childhood psychology in college, that when you look at kids before puberty, that sounds weird, and you look at people after, say, 60s and 70s, the genders become less obvious. Their shapes are more generic when they're young and when they're old. But as in adult years, it's easier to find that definitive gender look. Does that make sense? Do I need to make a separate video about that? There we go. That was a lot of information. You leave your comment right here.